All right. Welcome to After Dinner Conversations, After Dinner Conversation. I'm your host, Drew Rhodes, and today with me, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Colin Kohlhaas, who is being featured in our June 2025, June 2026 issue with his story, Bad Dog. Colin, you want to say hi to our audience?
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
All right. First off, why don't you just tell everybody who you are, where you're at, where you're located, etc.
So, I live in central Pennsylvania near Harrisburg. This is my hometown. I was in school for many years. I went to West Virginia for undergrad, and then I did grad school at Binghamton. I have a doctorate in history that I got a few years ago, and then decided I really did not want to pursue teaching or academia. I work in a museum right now, so got my feet in the history field, but I started writing fiction about when I graduated, and I've really enjoyed doing that. And I feel like I've grown a lot as a fiction writer in the past 2 years. Yeah, I tend to write. I either write usually horror or literary stuff.
Awesome, awesome. So tell us about Bad Dog. What's it about? What inspired it? All that sort of stuff.
So the story is about a lawyer who invites one of his worker like employees, so another lawyer to his farm. He has an animal farm, and he discusses with him what to do about a dog that he has that won't stop killing other animals, and it's a cruelty-free farm.
Hmm.
So the question is, what do you do with this dog that won't stop killing in a cruelty-free way? And the story is them discussing possible ways to deal with this dog. And yeah, that's the gist of the story is them just having a conversation that gets, very philosophical in terms of what they're gonna do with the dog. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, is the dog a metaphor for anything in this story?
Well, I'm not sure if am I not supposed to give away the
Yeah,
ending?
don't give away too much,
Okay.
but you can say like what
Um,
inspired it or like
yeah,
what
it's
thinking led
so
into it.
So the entire story is sort of an allegory for what to do with just in general society, in a society that prides itself on being quote unquote cruelty free, trying to do the best thing with criminals and with the general public. What do you do with someone who is just they were born in a way where they have an insatiable urge to do things that are terrible? What do you do with somebody like that in a cruelty-free society?
I mean, it's a fair question, you know. Looking forward to the examination of that in your story. Um, Before we get into some of my more kind of pre-planned questions, my ears kind of peaked a little bit with the PhD in history and the working in a museum because that's a pretty cool and sort of unusual job working in a history. How do those things influence your writing? You know, because I mean I know a lot of people who study history go on to become great writers and I got to imagine there's like a lot of inspiration around you working in a museum as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the biggest influence of history on my fiction is my dissertation dealt very heavily with masculinity issues, especially violence and masculinity, and sort of like my dissertation was about early 20th century Chicago.
It's very, very
But a
complex.
lot of, still a lot of parallels for the modern day. And in my academic work, I explore masculinity a lot, especially like the intersection of violence and masculinity and the ways that um, those the ways that sort of what we would call like colloquially like toxic masculinity like
Mhm.
often leads men to commit violence and it creates cultures of violence. And you see in Bad Dog, it's not. there's not like it's not explicitly about that, but you do see some of this masculinity aspects in the conversations between the two characters, Reinhardt and George.
Hmm.
And I have I've written my novel that I'm working on is heavily dealing with masculinity issues. I also have some I have one story. I have one historical fiction story. You know, I've only written one historical fiction story, even though I do history. But and then I actually, you know, talking about the museum, I actually have a story about a guy working in a museum. So it's sort of like influenced by my personal experience. So in some ways, it's directly influenced.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Also, by the way, just side note, I love the name Reinhardt. Was that perhaps influenced by Django Reinhardt at all?
I don't I don't know why. I don't like authors have a lot of different ways of picking names. Mine kind of just sometimes come to me. Like I don't know why I settled on that name. Yeah, exactly. I wanted something kind of like scary and intimidating sounding. And I don't know how that one popped into my head, but it
Hmm.
did, and I liked it. Like, and then on the other end, like George Brantley, like I actually what was I had read a book where there was a character named Brantley, but George I just picked because I thought I wanted like a common kind of like meek sounding name. So I kind of picked them in like the dynamic of, you know, powerful and intimidating and kind
Yeah,
of
like
like
the vibe that they would impose, so to speak. Yeah, I see that. Um, so is that like how you normally come up with author names? They just kind of like float in out of the ether or what? Because or not author names, character names. Because I'm always really curious about that. I steal a lot of my character names from like literally everything around me. You know, like I got a typewriter. It's an old typewriter, and on it is etched Kip Dickey, and I was like, I'm gonna steal that name. I don't know who this guy was, but I love that name and I'm gonna use it for something. You know?
Yeah, I think it depends on the story. Like sometimes I have like specific like this story I'm talking about. I think there were like very specific reasons I picked those names.
Yeah, yeah,
Other times things just kind of come to me. I think about like who like, you know, where the character is, what social class they are, you know, like where are they from? I basically all of my stories are in America, so like
yeah,
what
yeah,
part of America are they from? Do I want them to be like a common character, you know, a common sounding, like identifiable, like a, you know, everyman character? Do I want them to be like someone who seems somehow like above or separated from people, you know? So I have a lot of different ways to pick names.
makes sense. Makes sense. So speaking of coming up with ideas, how do you come up with your ideas for your short stories? Is it kind of like a
Um,
similar process where it kind of floats in, or
yeah, so most of my, you know, most of my stories start with some type of idea or question. Um, And you know, a lot of times it's stuff that I mean, a lot of times, like I mean, before I started writing, I had a lot of ideas that were just floating around in my head that I like wanted to eventually get on paper. But you know, now that I do write consistently, it's just there are questions and things I talk about with my friends and ideas, you know, they just kind of they linger there. And then I kind of decide like, is that worth a full story? And then I just kind of I set out to write a story based on that idea, but that's really all the planning that goes into most of these.
hmm.
I'm just kind of like I want to explore a certain idea, and then I kind of just let things come to me. Like, you know, going back to the name thing, you know, sometimes I pick a random name. Like sometimes I'll do that. I'll just pick a name.
Yeah,
And then I write for a while, and like sometimes I'm like, I like this name, and other times I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it. So, and that's kind of, you know, I might have sometimes I go into it thinking like, okay, like I think I want the story to end here, but like most of the time that isn't what happens. It's something
yeah,
it goes a completely different direction. So I'm definitely more of like a fly by the seat of your pants writer.
yeah. I get that as well. I'm definitely a fly by the seat of the pants. I like the phrase that I like that I heard was architects and what was it architects and gardeners or something like that, like architects and gardeners, like people like there's some people that plan everything out and then there's other people that just kind of plant things and then watch them grow. I'm more of a watch them grow, although I tell you, I always hated the phrase planners and pantsers because I'm like, what the heck is a pantser?
I've never heard that before.
You haven't? Oh, that's so that's one way that people describe the two different ways that people write is like the people who plan everything out and then people who go by the seat of their pants.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
that.
and they call them pantsers, but I'm like,
Okay, that's funny.
oh, it's such an ugly phrase. Um, but yeah, I love that when the thing takes that unexpected U-turn and you're like, oh, like where is this going? And you're
Yeah.
writing it, and it's like a surprise to you as you're writing it. That's a really good feeling. And I feel like I don't know if you're the same way, but I feel like most of my best stories come out that way.
Yeah, I
Like what I
agree.
always tell people is like they go, "Oh, you wrote a good story," and I'm like, "No, I'm dumb." Like whatever spirit inhabited me that put the story out, or my subconscious or whatever, like I just listen to that thing, you know. If I like exert too much control over a story, it'll go to pot real quick, you know.
Yeah, I was in a workshop where I workshop like one of the ones that I really did have like an ending in mind at the outset. And then like of all the stories I've gotten workshop, I think that one I've gotten the most pushback on the ending of like,
Mm.
they didn't like the ending. And I think that's kind of indicative of like, I because I set out to write the story around the ending, like maybe it didn't resonate with people because it didn't feel organic, maybe.
Possibly. Kind of like it's kind of like how people talk about that show How I Met Your Mother. You remember that? And then the ending
Yeah, I
came
never
out
really
and
watched it.
everybody well, the ending came out and everybody hated it, but it was because they had planned the ending in like the first season and then it went
Mm.
on for 10 seasons and then it like outgrew its original ending and they tried to stick with it and everybody wound up hating it, you know. So I think that there's a logic in that. You know what I mean? Um, is there any standard publishing advice or writing advice that you disagree with, or any standard advice that you feel is too often neglected?
So I think, and this is coming from somebody who has not, like, I've gotten short stories published, but I am not, I haven't tried to get an agent. I haven't tried to get a novel published. I'm not there yet. So, I mean, this is coming from someone who's still like kind of a novice with this, but, I still think that when I talk to people who know what they're, especially genre public, like, people trying to tell me about genre publishing presses,
Mhm.
like, I just feel like there's a strict separation still between what's a genre book and what's a literary book, and I've been told that that barrier is kind of starting to break down, and like I just think that I think that new writers are given advice sometimes to like you need to fit your book to this genre.
Mhm.
When like in my experience, I mean I think some of my favorite books are not like they're not strictly anything,
Oh yeah.
they're not there, and especially now, there's a lot more like what you would call like literary horror,
Mhm.
stuff that doesn't like it's not like traditional horror, but it's also not it's a mix of the two. But then I've heard even like established writers say that it's sometimes hard to find a press that will publish a book like that, which is it's scary for a first time writer for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
But I just I think that I try to live by like I'm gonna write what I want to write, and then hopefully people will appreciate it on its merits, and I will eventually be able to publish it with so that somebody will find it appealing to publish without trying to like conform to either literary or genre.
I totally agree there. I think that like the best thing to do is like because writing a book is a lot like getting like a college degree. If you aren't enjoying what you're doing, you're probably not going to get through it, you know? So it's kind of like write the book that you want to write first and then figure out how to market it afterwards, you know? Like I kind of think that shouldn't even really be in your mind that
Yeah.
much as you're writing it because if you get too tripped up on kind of like what you were saying, like other people's advice and what other people are telling you and the genre and trying to figure out like the market and everything, you're probably not going to get to the end of the book because writing a book is like really hard in the first place, you know? Um, uh, Also, you said that you're working on your first book right now. What's your first book about, and how far along are you?
So actually, I actually just got to the end of the first draft, like yeah,
Hey.
I'm very excited about that. Yeah, that literally like last week. Yeah, like 2.5 years I've been working on it.
Oof.
So yeah, this is when I talk about like when, you know, when people ask me like what book is it? Like I kind of say I don't know, like because it started off as a horror book, but it's definitely not now.
Yeah.
Like I would classify it as like dark literary fantasy, maybe. There's a lot of psychological stuff, but the elevator pitch of the book, it's about a 21-year-old kid who because of he gets kind of sucked into to drinking like extensively on weekends with
Hmm.
like a new work group that he's with and his friend, and he starts to have really vivid dreams, and he starts to try to analyze those dreams, and it leads down like a dark road of discovery and trying to like parcel out a lot of different things about himself and about the world, and it leads in a whole lot of different directions. But yeah, I mean, even though it's done, I still have trouble kind of defining it because
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Have you
it's,
had
it's sorry.
have you had other people read it and then like go like, "Hey, okay, so now that you've read it, what would you categorize this as?"
Well, I've had people read. I took a novel writing workshop kind of
Hmm.
recently, so I've had people read bits of it, but I it's nowhere near close to like having people read the whole thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and like it's hard because there's different when he's in the dreams, it's a totally different writing style. Like
Mm.
it's written in like stream of consciousness. There's no sentence breaks. It's first person, and when he's awake, it's third person. So I'm really trying a lot of experimental things. So, and I need to like on the next edit, I need to really like hone in on like what I want to do with those kinds of things. But yeah, so it's all over the place right now, but
Well, it
hopefully it
sounds cool,
wraps.
you
And
know? Like it
yeah,
sounds
thank you.
like it's really coming along. How many words is it? Like what are you up to now?
Right now it is about, I want to say like 120,000 maybe.
Oof, that's a big boy.
Yeah, what's that?
I said that's a big boy.
Yeah, and it needs to be shorter and it will
Yeah,
be shorter, but right now it's just, there's a lot of stuff that I need to cut and stuff. But yeah, I'm hoping to get it down to like 90 to 100,000.
that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so who would you say is the ideal reader for your work, whether it's your short stories or novels? Would it be the same kind of reader for both or
Yeah, I like I just really like when people read my stuff and then ask me things about it. Like I really like when, I think it's very frustrating when somebody, it's hard enough to get like anybody that reads anything I write, I'm thankful for because it's hard to get people to read stuff. But when they do,
for
like,
real?
yeah, it's very frustrating when you ask like, well, what do you think? And they're like, oh, it was good. Like and there's nothing else. It's just like, okay, well, what do I do with that? I
Yeah,
really like when they ask stuff. It's like, well, what did you mean by this? Like, what does the ending mean? Like, and then give me, I also I like critiques of it that are as
yeah,
long as they come from a good place.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I just think, I think that workshops are so helpful because you
Hmm.
get a room full of people who want to really analyze and think about stuff. And like I want to entertain. Like I want
Yeah,
my stories to be entertaining, but I also I write with a lot of different ideas in my head and themes I want to convey. And like I want people to think about those things. And it helps me a lot, like if it's a story I'm working on to like what do you think the story is about? Like what do you think the themes are?
yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it. It's almost heartbreaking when someone reads your work and their response is just completely flat, you know? Um, like you want something, like you're like, I put so much work into this. Could you give me
Yeah.
something? But then it's at the same time you got to remember it's like, well, like at least they read it, like at least they got that. Do you publish your work anywhere like online aside from the official publications? Like, do you have a site like a Substack or anything? This is where this interview is going to be on Substack.
Yeah, I don't have a site. I've been contemplating that. I've been trying to like think about. I'm not a big like self-promotion type person.
Yeah.
I'm just not. It's not my thing. I just made a Blue Sky. I'm trying to get
Okay.
more active on there, but not yet. I do have a website, but I post the links to my published stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I do the same. I although I've been for this past year, I've been really trying to post on Substack, and it's like it's one of those things where sometimes it's really cool, sometimes you get really good feedback. The cool thing about it, and I'm not trying to like plug it or anything, but it gives you a lot of different ways to tell your story. So like when I post my stories on there, like I'll do readings of them, I'll set like music to them. I'm like any way I can get people to listen to this or read it or interact with it or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of the cool thing is like if you give people more opportunities to interact with you, then it's like you'll get those people that like maybe only want to read it or only want to listen to it or only want to whatever. I'm trying to figure out how to do video now. I mean, not like this kind of video, but some sort of entertaining video. Let me ask you a question. It wasn't on the interview, but I was just kind of curious from our talking. What made you want to be a writer? Like what first inspired you down this path?
So I always liked, I mean, from the time I was a little kid, I enjoyed just writing stories. Like I went, when I was like maybe in sixth grade, I tried to, I set out to write a book and I
Hmm.
wrote about 20 pages and it was a complete ripoff of The Lord of the Rings and then I scrapped it. I always kind of had that bug in me to write.
Mm,
And I just like I kind of meandered through high school, like not knowing what I wanted to do at all. But I was very good at any kind of writing related thing. Like
mhm.
history was, I majored in history, obviously, and
Yeah.
I took a lot of like when I was in undergrad, I took a lot of like all of my like electives that I could just do anything. They were almost always writing or English classes. Um, and yeah, I mean, it kind of just sat like, then I was in grad school for 7 years and I was completely focused on that. But I mean, obviously, I'm doing a different kind of writing,
Yeah.
but I just think, I feel like I just had a talent for it. And the whole, like, when I got later into grad school and I kind of realized, like, I don't really want to do, like, I don't want to be in academic history for the rest of my life. It's just, I'm not going to go into it, but there's a lot of reasons. But,
All right, you can go
I
into it
kind
if
of
you
just
want. I don't mind. I've got
no,
some
I don't
academic
like.
grievances myself.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, like so the last semester I was in grad school, I wasn't teaching, like my fellowships and my funding had run out. So I
Hmm.
kind of just was I was working on like finishing the dissertation, but I had a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to write something. And the funny thing is, the first story I tried to write turned into my novel.
Yeah.
But then I did start to write some stories and stuff. And they looking back, like they weren't good at first, but I was like, I really, really like this. Like
Yeah.
I want to do this. Like
Yeah.
and yeah, and it felt so like history writing is very fulfilling in many ways, but I just the to me like writing a fiction story, or I do poetry too, and poetry's similar. Like it's
Me
satisfying in
too.
a different way, you
Yeah.
know. I think it allowed like and I think that it allowed me to explore a lot of things about myself that I didn't, of being beaten over the head with work and grad school for 7 years. I didn't get a chance to really explore.
Hmm.
And I felt like I could kind of do those things with fiction, like
Yeah.
in a way that I couldn't with history. And the more I did it, the more I grew to love it. And yeah, like I just think it's something that I wish I would have done from the beginning. But I mean, I don't like regret what I did with getting the history degree. Like I do love
I mean,
history.
it's awesome that you have a PhD too. Like we can call you Dr. Kohlhaas.
It
Like
wears off pretty quickly.
really, I feel like I never
Yeah,
get tired of that.
the first like year, maybe like
Yeah.
6 months to a year, I was like, I wasn't like, oh, you got to call me doctor, but it felt really good, like when people did. But
Yeah.
now I'm kind of like, eh. Take it or leave it.
I would be so pretentious about that for so long. Nobody would hear the end of it. um, so in terms of like inspirations or whatever, what sort of authors inspired you when you were younger and continue to inspire you?
I mean, I've read a lot of different authors, especially recently, but I think Stephen King, I gotta say, is the
Oh, he's the
biggest
man.
influence. Like I've been reading him since I was, pretty young, and then I
Hmm.
went through I've read almost everything by him at this point. He has some duds for sure, but like
I
I
mean,
just
nobody
yeah,
bats 100,
yeah.
or bats 1,000 rather.
But yeah, I mean, he'll always be my favorite. But lately, I think more as a kid, like I read like Catcher in the Rye when I was
Hmm.
like of that age, and I was pretty inspired by that. What else? Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to remember school, but more recently, like I've just been trying to read as many people as possible, and I'm more of a short story guy, so
Yeah.
I really like my biggest inspirations as a writer now are probably like Dennis Johnson, Bora Chung, um, George Salter. I'm reading Raymond Carver right now.
Nice.
My stories are my favorite stories are the ones that are sort of like weird. I don't
Yeah.
know, just for an overarching term. Like they're experimental, they mix up
Hmm.
style, they feel like like Dennis Johnson's stories are very like kind of dreamlike. So those are, like my novels about dreams. So
Yeah.
I'm very into exploring, those kinds of like styles.
That's awesome. Yeah, I Raymond Carver, you mentioned him, one of my biggest influences, him and Flannery O'Connor, I both really like.
Yeah.
And lately, so it's funny that you mentioned being really into short stories. I'm really into short stories too, because I like that I can just sit down and read a whole story
Yep.
and then move on with my day. Like I don't have to like invest months or whatever or weeks into something that may not pan out very well.
Yeah.
Um, so that's cool.
Yeah, I DNF a lot of novels these days. Like if I'm not feeling it, I just don't finish it.
Yeah, yeah. Lately, I've been going back and exploring Roald Dahl's short stories. The one that he wrote for adults, which tend to be like really dark and macabre, but also have that kind of playfulness that his children's books have. They're pretty interesting. They're pretty fun.
I should check that out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read a lot of this stuff as a kid.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. His so originally he started out as an adult writer, not like adult, not like sexy adult, but he wrote for adults, and then he had kids and he started writing stuff for them, and then it just blew up, and he actually would like apologize for writing children's stories for like a really long time, and then say that he was going to get back to writing adult stories. And then later on, when he never got back to writing adult stories, he was like, "Oh, children's stories are harder to write, anyways." So, but yeah, they're really good. Okay, so we got about 7 minutes left here. Any authors or books that you would recommend to help challenge a person's way of thinking?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned some of the ones that I was so like some of the
Yeah,
short
no.
stuff.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's okay, yeah. No, like I would again recommend like Dennis Johnson, I think is just like the his stuff it just is really it really makes you be like, I thought I knew how to write a story,
Hmm.
and I guess I really don't. And like George Salter, I think is it George or James? I think it's George, right?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that
I
one.
don't I think it's George, but I'm not 100% sure. But he's another one that
I know that
is
you
just
wrote
like
James Salter in the interview for
yeah,
Jesus'
I
Son.
think that's
Yeah.
right then. I mixed it up, of course. But yeah, he's a very odd writer. Like his stories are just strange. Like, for example, he has one story where the last paragraph of the story is a physical description of a woman.
Hmm.
That's how it
Interesting.
ends.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, if he was in any writing program in the world, they would be like, what is that? Like you can't do that. But
Fair,
you
but
read it and that's
also
how it works. Like
Yeah, well, that's kind of I always say so. I'm a part of some writers groups. And I always say like, because sometimes you go into a writers group and they give you feedback, and then you bring the story back the next week, and they're like, "You didn't listen to my feedback," and I go like you suggested feedback, but I'm the captain of this ship. Like I got a final say over how this goes. You know, it's like if this thing bombs, it's not you that's dealing with it. You know, so I think that's just one of those things where it's like, as a writer, you got to trust your gut. And sometimes your gut says, I'm going to spend the last paragraph of this describing a woman's body, you know? um, okay. So we're about out of time here. But Colin, why don't you tell people where they can find you? Where can they find, where can they connect with you? I know that you said that you're on Blue Sky. Um, yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
Yep. Yeah. For right now, I have a Blue Sky. It's CLK Writing Services. Um, I always it's like at Blue Sky dot something. I can't remember. That's
Yeah, CLK Writing
uh,
Services dot bsky dot social.
yeah, it's a little complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to branch out to other like I don't really want to use Twitter, but I'm hoping to make
Mm,
like a professional Instagram. I have a personal Facebook, but and then my website is Colin with one L K.com.
okay.
ColinLK.com, sorry.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you can find my published works and my journalistic stuff and my academic, everything's on there.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean about Twitter, X, whatever. I haven't started one yet either, but they say, "Oh, if you're a writer, you got to be on there." I'm like, "Do I really have to be on
Yeah.
there?" Like, or I don't know. So right now, I'm trying to make it work with Substack, though. That has its own issues as well. Great as a newsletter service, as a social media service, it's a little hit and miss, but I think it's getting better as it goes along, and definitely a lot of cool ways to tell a story. Okay, well, the author is Colin Kohlhaas. The story is Bad Dog. It is appearing in our June 2026 issue of After Dinner Conversation. I've been Drew Rhodes. Thank you so much for joining us here at After Dinner Conversations. After Dinner Conversation. You want to say goodbye, Colin?
Goodbye, everybody.
All right, goodbye, everybody.